special teaching thing?
A couple things I just wanted to say. So what we're doing today is poetry. And normally, if this was in a real classroom, first of all, I would have definitely more interaction, but I only have 5 minutes, so I'm going to go kind of quickly and just model this. I think a lot of people do not like poetry because they don't know how to read it. And so this is just like a real easy way I did in high school, really formulaic. I know my little brother and his friend, I was like, do you remember that thing Mrs. Scott did? And they're like, oh, Tpcastt, and they named off all of them, and they're like, math people hate English. And so it just like was comforting to me, like, okay, they remember this. This is encouraging. So this is called Tpcastt. I don't know if any of you have heard of it before. Okay, so the first T is title. So what you do is like just a real cold, just look at the title. I like to see it lap the miles. So what you might think of, whenever I first saw it, I thought of like a dog lapping water, or like a runner, or some sort of car going around a race. And then the P is paraphrase. So what you're going to do is you're just going to read through it and then paraphrase stanza by stanza. So, I like to see it lap the miles and lick the valleys up, and stop to feed itself at tanks, and then prodigious step. Around a pile of mountains and supercilious pier, in shanties by the sides of roads, and then a quarry pair. To fit its sides and crawl between, complaining all the while, in a horrid hooting stanza, then chase itself downhill. And neigh like oranges, then prompter than a star, stop, docile and omnipotent at its own stable door. Okay, so we're going to break it down real small. So, I like to see it lap the miles and lick the valleys up, and stop to feed itself at tanks, and then prodigious step. So, whatever it is, goes miles, around valleys, and has to stop and feed. But is really powerful. Okay, so I may not write all of them down just for time's sake. But and then you probably can't read it anyway. So and then around a pile of mountains and supercilious pier, in shanties by the sides of roads, and then a quarry pair. So we know it's going really far because it's going around mountains. Supercilious, it's like looking down on shanties, which are like little where poor people live in little tin houses or whatever. And then so it's going by the sides of roads, and then a quarry pair. So we're going through like quarries. They're mining something. And then to fit its sides and crawl between, complaining all the while, in horrid hooting stanza, then chase itself downhill. So once again, it's going quickly, it's crawling between mountains, but it's making a lot of noise, and maybe in step because it's stanzas. And then it's going down hills. And then neigh, like the oranges, which is the name that Jesus gave to James and John for, we call them the sons of thunder. So then it's really powerful. So whatever it is neighing, so it reminds you of a horse. And then, but then all of a sudden it stops, and it's both calm but also powerful. And then at its own stable door. So once again, makes you think of horses. So then C is connotation. So any like words that have like specific connotation. So shanties, definitely you think of something, you think of more like poor neighborhoods, things like that. A quarry makes you think of, I mean, the things that we get from quarries are precious, expensive. So there's like something, those are totally contrasting. This definitely, since we talked about that, it's something powerful, sons of thunder, a star, really like prestigious, and then like a stable door. The connotations you might think of like horses, livestock, that kind of thing. So you're trying to pick out specific words that might have other meanings than just their flat meaning. And then A is attitude. So we kind of have, like I said, some words like prodigious and, let's see, like ning, omnipotent, so really like strength. The attitude might be like reverent, whatever this is, it's like really powerful, and we're like looking at it going around mountains. And then S is shifts. So let's see any like specific shifts. And the ones that I saw were like really more strong ones right between here. So we're going from like, she's talking about whatever it is, like looking down on things, and then we go to it like crawling in between. And then another like really strong shift I saw right here. So we're talking about it being like really powerful, and it's going, and then it just stops. So there's like a really strong shift right there. And so we're kind of looking at like, what are these shifts telling us? So we look at the title again. So something that's really important in the title, it says, I like to see a lap the miles, which obviously is just the first line of the poem, which is very Emily Dickinson-like. But what is it? So at first you might think we have words like neigh and door, stable door. It's going around and you might think, oh, it's just a horse. But what is also powerful at this time, that's on roads, and could be like a horse? So this poem is actually about trains. So the it is trains. So that's what it is lapping the miles. So like it goes miles and miles around mountains, really strong. So the title might say like it's about horses, about trains. And then so once we realize that, we can read it all again and think about trains this time. I like to see it lap the miles and lick the valleys up, and stop to feed itself at tanks and then prodigious step, around a pile of mountains and supercilious pier, and shanties by the sides of roads and then a quarry pair. To fit its sides and crawl between, complaining all the while, and hoarding, hooting stanza. And that's another thing that kind of helps you see a train, because it's like chug it, chug it, chug it, chug it, chug it, chug it. It's more in like step, then chase itself downhill, and neigh like born geese, and then prompter than a star stop, docile and omnipotent, at its own stable door. Okay, so a theme that we could maybe get from this. So we know it's about a train now. We know that it's really powerful. It's taking over. Emily, I should have put the date up here. The date is like the 1860s, which is whenever the train was just becoming big. And up until this point, the most powerful and quick form of transportation would have been a horse. So it's maybe like the theme, we could get something like the shift from horse transportation to the new train, or just looking at something like that. I mean, there's no like set thing that you have to find on this. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. So what we did in my class was each student would be assigned a poem, and we would do this at home, and then you would be in charge of presenting it to the rest of the class. And I actually picked this one because the first time I read it and presented it to class, I was like, it's totally about a horse. And my teacher was like, not at all. That's good. So that's just a real, it's very like systematic and might seem a little like, okay, you have to go through every step. But after about 9 weeks of this, like, I got poetry down. So I would just recommend, if you are just like, where do I even start with poetry? This is just a good, very like simple and short way to do it. So, yeah.